miss. Do you know if we're nearly there yet? More or less. I believe the youth hostel is only a 10-minute walk away. Ah, that's good. My feet were starting to hurt. However, it would be a shame to turn in this early, wouldn't it? It is not even 3 p.m. yet. A collective murmur of disappointment resounded throughout the group of assembled girls. After the 4-hour coach journey, coupled with a 2-hour walk, most of the girls were tired, already prepared for a good night's sleep. Miss Pope smiled sweetly. Truly, it was the smile of an angel. Now then, this would not be a proper school trip unless there was an itinerary of exciting academic activities lined up, would it not? Another groan. Come now, don't sound so downhearted. Learning is fun, isn't it? That was why you agreed to come on this trip, right? It certainly wasn't because you wanted a free holiday, was it, Mr. Quincy? No, of course not. Samantha noticed that De Quincy still had not buttoned up her shirt. Maybe Miss Pope didn't care anymore. Despite her authoritarian ways, she could be rather fickle. Anyway, I'll be handing the worksheets out to you now. They have tasks printed on them that you must complete within the hour. Ah, but before that there is something I need to do. How silly of me to forget. Everybody stand still and be quiet for a few moments. In less than a second, the chatter of St. Mary's girls died down. The silence was so sudden it was unsettling, as though the cluster of girls in their light blue uniforms had been sucked into a void. Nobody argued with Miss Pope, not when she spoke like that. Even Georgia Byron, a real lady by birth, fell silent mid-conversation with Persephone Shelley. Good. Her lips pursed, Miss Pope began to do a quick head count. Now that I have ascertained that you are all here, I'm going to divide you up into groups of 4. And yes, I am aware we have an odd number of students. Thank you, Mr. Quincy. Despite being an English teacher, I can still do primary level mathematics, incredible as though that may seem. So that will be 5 groups of 4 and 1 group of 3. Now, let me see. How am I going to divvy you up? At these dreaded words, the students of St. Mary's began to cluster together, clinging to one another as though for dear life. Samantha noted that, once more, De Quincy had wrapped her arm firmly around Lillian's. The sight was stung rather more than it should have. Did De Quincy have no concept of personal boundaries? Perhaps not, given what had happened over Christmas. No, that was a bad thought. Samantha did not want to think about that. Her stomach was hurting enough as it was. She did not want to make her head hurt too. Oh, you girls! Miss Pope snorted, surveying her students with undisguised disdain. You're all so predictable. Are you really that afraid of being separated from your best friends? It will only be 2 days. Where's your sense of adventure? I always thought an integral part of any school trip was to have new experiences, to interact and form bonds with others you would normally avoid. Isn't that right? Although she spoke with a sweet smile, there was something sinister lurking under the surface of her expression. Samantha shivered. She knew Miss Pope well, and she was well aware of how sadistic she could be. Miss Pope always seemed to take great delight in setting group tasks during her English lessons, just so she could watch with amusement at the chaos that inevitably unfurled when she made girls who hated each other work together. Miss Pope's stature wasn't the only childish thing about her. She experienced the same ill-gotten glee when it came to causing lesser living beings pain and misery that small children did when they set ants on fire through magnifying glasses or cut worms in two with their mother's sewing scissors. This was not going to end well. This was not going to end well at all. And, as Samantha feared, she had been right. She was always right about the things she did not want to be right about. That was just further proof that the world was a cruel place. I can't believe I got grouped with you. The feeling's more than mutual. How can a feeling be more than mutual? I know you want to one-up me, Bobby, but that kind of hyperbolic exaggeration doesn't exactly make any sense. If you want to correct people, do it over YouTube. I'm not in the mood. Oh? I thought you would be happy, Bobby. And what exactly would I be happy about? Why, that I was trying to teach you something new, of course. Education is very important. Being from Bristol, you probably didn't have much in the way of that during your younger years. Well, where I'm from is completely irrelevant. As if a person like you could have anything to teach me. Georgia Byron smirked, her pointed incisors on prominent display. Sometimes Samantha wondered, did Georgia file her teeth just as people file their nails to make them that sharp? They couldn't have been natural, could they? If they were, Samantha felt incredibly sorry for Georgia's mother. She must have been quite a handful as a baby. Or mouthful, rather. Are you trying to talk down to me? You? Perhaps I am. What of it? I hope you haven't forgotten, Bobby, but I am Lady Georgia Gabriella Byron, the 6th Baroness Byron. Of course I haven't forgotten, and it is unfortunate too. If I could, I would erase every single memory I have of ever interacting with you. Jealousy can be a bitter pill to swallow, can't it? Why would I be jealous of you? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's because I am a real lady, and you're nothing more than a daughter of a milliner from Bristol. Milliner? How rude! But sometimes it is necessary to say rude things to stop certain people having delusions of grandeur. Georgia smirked unpleasantly. With one single swift motion, she moved forwards, bringing her face within inches of Roberta's. What are you doing? Get away from me! I'm just thinking. Georgia giggled, taking a few strands of Roberta's hair between her fingers. Roberta's hair was soft at the touch, and a rather pretty colour too. Under a bright light, it was like marmalade. Now, however, given the sky was overcast and the sun was shrouded by clouds, it was more like burnt sugar. Just because you know how to use a curling iron, that doesn't mean you're a real lady. You might have a pretty face, but it won't last for long. My title, however, is something I can never lose. I'm always going to be superior to you, no matter how long you spend fussing over your hair each morning. So if I were you, I would think a little bit more seriously about how you address me in the future, my dear Roberta. And with another poisonous giggle, Georgia released her hold on Roberta's hair. That was what? Exciting? Thrilling? Did it make your heart skip a beat? No, it wasn't. You pushed too far this time, Byron. I know I did. It's what I do. The real question is, how are you going to respond? I await with bated breath for your, no doubt, incredibly witty response. What was that? I didn't hear you. Surely you aren't going to let me get away with it, are you? You have to say something. If you don't, it will only confirm my saddest suspicions that you really are an insipid bore with no capacity for imagination. Right, that does it! Roberta, stop! If Roberta really did hit Georgia, any hope at forming some kind of peace treaty, no matter how tentative, would be destroyed in seconds. Roberta, don't. It's what she wants. Are you saying I want to be punched? If you think I'm a masochist like you? I just dislike confrontations, that's all. Especially when they're as needless as this. We'll not get anything done this way, and I don't want you to abuse each other. Samantha had to think very carefully, wording her sentences with precision. Georgia was the kind of person to pick up on the smallest openings in conversation and exploit and open them up for her own amusement. Unfortunately, you would prefer it were you being the one abused instead. She had not been careful enough. Isn't that why you've been chasing after Lillian for so long, even though she no longer wants anything to do with you? Samantha winced. Lillian was a painful subject matter, and having it dredged up like this, when she had been trying hard to push it to the very back of her mind, smarted. I didn't know why you like Lillian so much myself. I've always thought she was exceedingly pompous and self-serving. She irritates me. Everyone irritates you, Byron. Then perhaps, though it pains me to admit, we have a few things in common after all. Sam, on the other hand, you just can't help yourself, can you? Lillian could break all your fingers and you would still thank her for it. Don't you think that's kind of pathetic? The insults levelled at herself did not hurt Samantha. She often thought far crueler things about herself after all, but those directed at Lillian did. She could not simply stand there while Georgia insulted Lillian, could she? I don't know, Lillian's been a bit of a jerk. I'm gonna have a sip of water. So, we're not gonna defend Lillian because she's been so gross to us. Samantha looked at the ground, rendered mute by Georgia's merciless criticisms. How could she respond when a small, mutinous part of her being, a part she did not want to admit she possessed, thought Georgia had a point? It was true. Lillian could be pompous, and she could be self-serving. She was cold and she was distant. Samantha had thought these things before, and more besides. The only difference was, unlike Georgia, Samantha could not say such things out loud. She could not. She loved Lillian far too much for that. Georgia snorted. So tell me, as I have no reference point to go on, being fortunate enough to have never been so deluded in my life, how does it feel to be besotted with an ice princess so in love with her own genius, she would sooner wax poetical over her own reflection than comfort you? Samantha's face turned deep scarlet. Her whole body trembled like the flickering flame of a candle. Sensing and being sensitive towards Samantha's discomfort, a small voice attempted to cut through George's ruthless remarks. Now, let's all try to get along, shall we? The voice belonged to Persephone, known as Percy. Shelley, a gentle-looking girl who always bundled up in her oversized school sweater, even during the summer. Are you trying to tell me what to do, Percy? No. Although Percy's voice was quiet, there was a certain kind of determination to it. She was one of the few people who was capable of scolding Georgia when she had gone too far. I'm just saying that Samantha has a valid point. We will get this task done more quickly if we cooperate. After all, isn't that what school trips are about? Miss Pope said it too. Forming bonds, new friendship, working as a team. Even amongst people who, at a glance, may seem completely at odds with one another. You don't think Miss Pope really believes that, do you? Well, I suppose not, but there is no reason why I can't believe it. In theory, maybe, but theory never works out so well in real life. Percy pouted. That's no good, Georgia. Your lazy cynicism is the reason why these theories never work out. It's because you don't even try. You mean, if I learnt to change my wicked ways, the whole world would become a peaceful utopia overnight? Of course I don't mean that. I just think if you stop being so pessimistic, you could make a difference. Everybody holds the potential within themselves to make a change. Yeah, sure. And that's why peaceful protests work so well, isn't it? I wish you would stop being so prickly, Georgia. It's not necessary. Yes. For a so-called lady, you aren't very good at remembering your manners, Georgia. Oh, do be quiet, Bobby. Your voice grates on me. Samantha surveyed the other three girls with a not entirely unfounded sense of trepidation. Samantha surveyed the other three girls with a not entirely unfounded sense of trepidation. Samantha surveyed the other three girls with a not entirely unfounded sense of trepidation. Samantha surveyed the other three girls, not with an entirely unfounded sense of trepidation. Of course, Miss Pope would put them together, in such an obviously dysfunctional study group. Everybody knew just how much Georgia and Roberta hated one another. Their intense animosity was a popular subject of gossip among the girls of St. Mary's, as the two competed over almost everything. Roberta couldn't even stand to be in the same room as Georgia, where Georgia delighted in trailing Roberta around like a poltergeist, always appearing whenever Roberta was in her lowest just to poke fun at her. Georgia seemed to delight in spreading misery and discord wherever she went. She was the kind of person who thrived on bitterness and hatred, just as flowers could not photosynthesize without the sun. Unfortunately, because Samantha spent so much time in Roberta's company, George's dislike of Roberta was often reflected upon Samantha too. And to think, once Samantha had entertained notions that this field trip might have been enjoyable. Well, that was one delusion that had been thoroughly dashed.